And we're back live. Hey everyone, Douglas here. Welcome back to the MMT Macro live stream. I'm back with my man Bijou. Bijou, how you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thanks.
Doing all right. Doing all right. You sound
considering
what?
All the rubbish on the news and everything.
Yes,
but we've got spending cuts in New Zealand.
Okay,
that's why right in the chat there with Danger Zone, he's complaining about all this talk about federal debt being too high.
Oh yeah.
And it's coming up to we're going to have our general elections before you guys.
Okay,
November or whatever this year. So there's been a bit of political point scoring about some giveaways.
Yes. The giveaways.
The giveaways. It's called election bribes always. It's like never talked about. Yeah. Like people need some of this in government investment or extra spending.
Yeah.
But then I was just mentioning in the chat there, for those who are just listening in and not reading the chat, we have public broadcasting still in New Zealand, and it's pretty decent, although they get funding cuts too, which is pretty sad. And that all kind of feeds back on itself because they got funding cuts. They don't have the time to do research, and they just have to suck in whatever the economic experts, usually people from banks, paid economists, and that tell them. But they're claiming they want to reduce the deficit, and there's going to be some spending cuts, blah blah blah. And it's just, I was just saying in the chat, whenever I turn on our Radio New Zealand RNZ News, I always hear this
about the spending cuts.
Can't escape it. Yes.
Yeah.
All the
that's why I don't listen to the news, man. That's why I stay away.
So the only time I listen to it is like usually in the morning when my girls are having their muesli and their cup of tea and breakfast, or maybe in the evening when they're preparing dinner in the kitchen and they turn on the radio. So it's a bit of a habit of my wife's family. They used to do that a lot too.
Yes.
But I go through the kitchen just to head outdoor or something to the laundry.
It's there. It's in front of you.
It's always that. It's always something. And so I just make these comments like, "This is fraudulent," or "This is." Yeah. They must think I'm a bit mad by now. But man, I just.
Speaking of fraudulent, I have a tweet in my mind it's not quite crafted yet, but it's really dawned on me that the last 3 years has either exposed every economist, macro guru, finance guy it's exposed everyone as a fraud, pretty much, right? Because everyone got wrong the COVID, the post-COVID stuff. Everyone's got wrong the inflation stuff, from some degree. Everyone got wrong the recession stuff. They're all just frauds, and I, in one sense, that's a good thing that everyone's just been exposed as an idiot. But on the downside, none of them have learned anything from this. None of them have thought like, oh, maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I've got this backwards. But all right, man. Hopefully by the end of the stream tonight, we'll cheer you up. We'll cheer you up by the end of the stream. Yeah. I know I'm glad to be back. We had. Thursday, okay. My wife had a surgery, medical procedure she had to have done Friday morning, 6 a.m. Right, so we were getting up at 4 a.m. Friday morning. Thursday night, massive storms, one of the strongest storms that's hit us in a quarter century in Michigan. Here, we were dodging tornadoes. We had a tornado to the north, a tornado to the south, and we had originally.
What do you do? How do you dodge a tornado over there?
Like the Matrix. I moved the city. I was like, ah!
Yes, that's right. I was just going to say. Yeah. You get old Ben Shapiro over. You sell your house quick.
Yes.
Move out. Yes. Move back in. Rebuy the house.
Yes. Yeah. Ben Shapiro. I sold my underwater home and dodged the tornadoes. But there was... I think it ended up being like an F2 and F3, but when it originally hit, the radar was showing an F4 tornado. I live in Michigan. These things don't happen in Michigan, but suffice to say, we were dodging tornadoes like Ben Shapiro. Someone bought my home in the middle of a tornado. I was like, this sounds like a great deal, and so we sold it, and we dodged it. The power went out. Okay, the power went out in my region. Yeah. Everyone lost power. We went 80 hours without power. So I've had a lot of. I've had time to contemplate, to seek the inner workings of my mind.
Well, this is why Floridians are so more advanced than you guys. When I was living in Florida and Louisiana, this was a seasonal thing. So we'd
Power outages all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very advanced down there. They have very advanced policy down in Florida.
Oh my God. Well,
Everyone's contemplating.
Suffice to say, had a lot of thinking, but thankfully I didn't miss too much. We did eventually get power back. It feels good to be back in front of the mic. Feels good to be back streaming. We got some good stuff to talk about tonight. We'll talk markets, possibly the Bulls taking over again. My video last night, I teased maybe the Bulls are gonna get back in control. I think it's a trap. But we'll talk about that.
Did you say the Bulls?
The Bulls. Bull, like the Chicago Bulls, but the stock. If you think stocks are going,
sounded like balls.
The balls are back in control.
Cool, man.
So
what people are flooding in. I'll mention one other thing that I've been working on. I went back to look at some physics, and so I was trying to figure out these spinor helicity variables.
Oh yeah,
which are quite a sort of trendy topic.
I was reading up on that.
Yeah, reading up on that. It's like massively simplifies calculations of scattering amplitudes and certain things. But I like it for the fundamental aspects of it, that it sort of really gets down to nuts and bolts. Elementary particle theory, and interesting because this is the merging of MMT and theoretical physics, right? That I sometimes talk about. So there's this confluence, right? So I've got Eric Weinstein is this kind of nerd.
I know who he is.
Who has also economics as well as physics, and the professional physicists kind of laugh at him, but he's kind of funny and he's kind of interesting.
The economists and finance guys laugh at him as well, so he's
probably.
Okay.
But he says some good things sometimes, right? But he's interviewing Roger Penrose. So Roger Penrose is one of my little heroes, and I think the title of the thing, so it's not related to economics, but I guess there's this crossover with Weinstein and his craft. So the title was like something like "What Are Spinners?" And this is something. Oh my God, it's so appropriate that I can just explain this using MMT to you.
All right, let's hear it.
Spinners in physics are so basic. They're a way of expressing quantum mechanics measurement processes in terms of the real geometric algebra. So it's just an algebra of space and time. But you have to go beyond vectors. You have to talk about like two-dimensional objects, three-dimensional and four-dimensional thing, which is called a pseudoscalar. The two-dimensional things are called bivectors, and the even ones, the 2 and the 4 dimensions, they square to -1.
Okay.
So that means they're imaginary numbers, so to speak, but they come out of real algebra. And I'm telling you, this stuff is so basic, even I can do it. And and that's a bit of a joke, but but really it is basic. It's like MMT, man. It's just nuts and bolts, simple stuff.
Yeah.
And if these big eggheads kind of could just stop sort of reading from the old textbooks and that, and just have a little bit of a look at this stuff, a whole lot of quantum mechanics would just become so much easier and simpler. And it's just like having an MMT lens on economics. Pretty much exactly. It's like a paradigm shifty thing, but it's not really. It doesn't infect the physics the way that neoclassical assumptions would infect economics, because in physics you don't have a choice about policy. You're just using nature, right?
Yeah.
So at that level, at the political level, there's not much really politics in the physics. It's just a better, clearer way of doing physics, and you don't have to ask stupid questions like what are spinners. They're just very simple geometric objects, and you just got to turf out the matrix algebra, which is just a very awkward, nasty way of doing it. It's like, analogy would be like doing equilibrium analysis, but keep constantly moving your equilibrium point around. So you're actually doing Steve Keen type dynamics, but you're always thinking in terms of equilibrium, and so it's just always shifting around, and it's just confusing the hell out of you, right? And you have to do so many tweaks. So this is what happens, with me sometimes. I look at these other physics channels, and I just immediately have this sort of MMT moment, like, if only they would just clear some of those old cobwebs away and look at things a little bit fresh. The thing that annoys me about that is those people are so much more smarter than me, and they could make a lot of progress. But it's like I said, because of the politics, because of the impact on real people's lives, and our conditions in the world and in the economy, MMT is just far more important than all that. But it's just amusing to me that I come across that stuff all the time.
Little overlap. Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
Overlap.
Well, speaking about dunces in the community, we'll be talking some dunces in the finance econ community tonight. We had some good back and forth with our buddy the Jordan Peterson of finance, Colin Roche once again coming back, says one thing that everyone agrees on and comes off as though it's the most profound thing, and then says 90 minutes of complete gibberish. Yeah, anyway. All right, I got some names to list off. Let's see who was here first. Danger Zone getting in the chat first. Thanks for dropping in and saying hi. Then we got Josh back at it, man. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Eugenio, man, welcome back. We got Ty Keynes back in the chat, like Michael Jordan coming back after a year off to re-lead the Bulls back to a three-peat, baby. Let's go. TR, welcome as well. Echo Skeleton, man, good to see you here. I don't know if you were here last week, but maybe you were. It's been a week or two. Thanks for saying hi. And dropping in. If you hear that screaming, that is my child outside right now, by the way, screaming their head off. So, man, my window's open. There's the band is down the street. The high school band is down the street playing too. But I got to keep the window open because it's too nice. So if you hear some background noise, it's all fun in the setting sun.
No worries, man. We love it. We love that stuff. Bit of natural background noise.
I think the kids should not be outside having fun.
Sorry for offending your pedagogy there.
The kids need to be inside on computers playing video games.
Study dusty textbooks and no real world experience is required.
Yeah.
I say if Vladimir appears back in the chat, or Ken PDX, I've got a bit of a shout out for them. Ken PDX gave me a good interesting tip on an article to read, so that was also very good last week. And Vladimir on local democracy, if he pops up, let me give a bit of a shout out to him.
Yeah.
To make it clear what I was going on about last week.
Right out of the gate, man. Ty coming in
some
big.
CA stuff
Coming in big.
Well, that's no good for me.
Yeah.
How do I convert that stuff into New Zealand dollars? For God's sake.
Ty, thanks for the $5, man. We'll talk M2, and if you hit me up in Twitter chat, I can send you that. HTML file.
M2, exciting stuff, man.
Oh, it is the most exciting thing, man. Oh, I bring up
that gets the monetary economy flowing.
That's why do you think I got 4 kids, man? I tell my wife, I'm like, listen, honey, I gotta tell you about M2, and before you know it, 9 months later, we got a kid, man. It's just how it works.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
More powerful than chess.
Yeah. No. It was a natural aphrodisiac. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, we'll talk M2. I really had been asked quite a few times by some patrons recently about the collapse in M2, and I see it on Twitter quite often, and anyway, the whole idea came up, and so finally I put a little more research. I always knew M2 is pretty pointless, not pointless, but it explains such a small aspect of the entire monetary picture, and we can go into it a little bit more tonight. But I thought, you know what, let's do a good M2 video, and let's just overlap M2, which again is really deposits, right? And in fact, I mean, deposits doesn't even show the whole picture. I mean, I really think something like the BIS private debt data probably shows the more complete picture. Obviously, you can kind of piece together that via the H.8 data to get something a little bit more closer to real time. But you have these 2 cycles that are going, and if you miss the finance cycle, you're going to miss or not the finance, the fiscal cycle. You're going to you're going to miss the entire. You're going to miss the big picture and the directional moves.
Picture.
So
it's also, it might relate to that. thing on the stealth stimulus. That'll probably more like overlap with the fun half today. Maybe sort of like a transition into that.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about
the
it.
fun half. You don't think my market updates out of the gate are fun?
Sorry.
The truth comes out.
I misspoke.
The truth.
Oh, that's terrible. A few black marks against me there. But yeah, there's so in the sort of finance bro space, we've had all that talk about liquidity drains.
Yeah.
Where's all the honey flowing to? But then also now I see stealth stimulus. So you got liquidity drains and stealth stimulus. Push and pulls and all this sort of stuff. All this talk going on. So that's kind of interesting. But if it comes up later, maybe I could mention a bit of that. It's kind of funny because it's like almost in that stealth stimulus talk. What I'm hearing is like, oh yeah, it's MMT, but we're not going to call it MMT.
yeah, you'd mentioned that. You'd sent that video link. I didn't catch the link, but apparently it's all the rage. Well, this sounds kind of like MMT, but it's not MMT. I promise. I promise it's not MMT. Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to get into this in a little while. I promised out of the gate I'd do market stuff, so I'll do market stuff. We'll talk markets for a second. But the Applied MMT guys from a Bob Murphy thread had quite the discussion, a continued discussion. If I can, let's see. Can I pull it up? I don't even have it up. Anyway, there was quite the continued discussion, just about MMT mechanics and all that sort of stuff. And we're going to get into that tonight. But it's important. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but we will get into that tonight. It is something that I definitely want to bring up that clearly people are getting wrong, and that's another thing too. Here's the point. I'll lead with this. I will then change subjects. I will rile Bijou up. I will then change subjects, and we can come back to it. But I think a lot of the MMT, particularly the activist MMT people, miss the whole picture. They get the MMT part. By that I mean they get the fiscal, they get the fiscal side of sectoral balances, but they completely miss the private sector side. And to a certain extent, something the debate that the MMT guys, the Applied MMT guys, was having with Colin Roche, Colin Roche says something that isn't 100% inaccurate. I mean, it is true, and I think because so many of the MMT activists miss this particular piece about the private sector, that you can say, well, I'm anti-MMT because the activist side of MMT just is completely unwilling to acknowledge the specific part, and it really is what the private sector brings to the table. So we'll discuss that. And to get to your point, danger zone. Yeah, I do think that Bob Murphy understands sectoral balances. I think these people get sectoral balances. I just think they've never done the next step, which is study, do the analysis, take the time to run the test to understand what the impact is of each flow in a sectoral balance, right?
Yeah.
And
obviously the opposite side to the MMT activists, right? So in between, there's something to be said that's a more complete picture. But I don't think it's the case that the MMT activists miss it. I think
they absolutely miss it.
They feel that they're on the defense because they're trying to push this totally counter paradigm view of macroeconomics, and so they feel like they have to push more the government spending angle on it. But they all know that at the private sector and the endogenous money circuit, if they've even vaguely passed across Randy Ray. So I think everyone knows that. It's just the emphasis and the tone and everything like that.
I don't know. I mean, back in between the back and forth that I've had, I don't think they do. I really
on
think
Twitter, maybe not. I mean, Twitter isn't the real activist space.
I don't know. I mean, there's some pretty big activists on there that are speaking. So yeah, we can get into that. We will discuss later. All right. I promise markets. We'll get into markets. Big bull rally over the last few days, over the last week or two. Yeah, Ty, I mean, I'm with you. I just think a lot, and if they do, they're not understanding the dynamic that's okay. All right, we'll get back to it. I promise. We'll get back to it. Maybe we should just linger there. Maybe we should start there. Let's see. What do you guys want? Markets or you want to debate? Oh, by the way,
I think you should probably do markets for.
Yeah. By the way,
isn't that the natural order of your Patreon?
Yeah,
come in, look at the markets, and then
yeah. I do got to say, yeah. Speaking Ghost on the Half Shell, welcome. By the way, Derek, welcome too, man. Thanks for dropping in, saying hi. I like monetary aggregates are aggravating. Yeah. Speaking of promises, because I had power out for 4 days last week, I was just unable to get to one of my promises, which was getting chapters. So for the last live stream, I promise, a soft promise, we'll get that going soon. All right, let's discuss some markets. All right. I think it was last month. I think it was almost a month ago to the day, at the end of July, that I'd said it probably is looking like we're going to be topping in markets. Obviously, we had a pretty crappy first 2-3 weeks of August. Things have settled down. We've now seen a nice little bounce since I think it was the end of the third week in August. So we've seen a good bounce. The question is, are we going to see this rally continue? And I don't think so. I think ultimately, I mean, I showed Deep MMT last week, so you can check that out last week. Deep MMT is still in the same spot. It's still looking for a pullback through. October. No change there. But one of the things, that definitely can make markets brittle is massive tax strains. It's not an every time thing, and there are a lot of dynamics at play, as I went over in that M2 video, obviously. There's a lot of moving parts there, but I didn't get Chrome set up to to switch over. To give me a second, but I'm going to switch over to Chrome. And by the way, chat, I am so sorry for this just disgusting white background of this chart. I hit go on this and then realized I just didn't have time to change the code up to change the background to HTML. I'm so sorry, if you forgive me, but. What I want to do is we're going to have, paint this picture. We're going to have two massive tax strains, both in September and October. And it's not an every time thing where tax strains necessarily have to hit markets hard. But it's if there are enough things going against markets, it can definitely weigh down, right? And one of the things that's just going against markets is we had a hell of a run up, right? And we had like a 3-month, 4-month run up, and so now you just kind of the natural cycle of things. You eventually hit into some some overhead resistance. And then that kind of compounds when other variables add in. So what I wanted to do, this is my monthly comparable flow chart that I have, and I went ahead. Normally, when it's on the MMT Macro Trader dashboard, it only goes to the 2019. But I wanted to show that there's some cyclicality to these flows. And kind of how to anticipate when things are going to hit. And what I want to point out is, generally speaking, September, so I'm highlighting over September right here. If you can see, September is a drain, right? We have a fiscal drain because of the large tax receipts that take place in September. And then again in 2019, again, a drain in September. And so you can see during normal times, September is usually kind of the second worst month when it comes to the fiscal side. We obviously during the COVID timeframe, when taxes were delayed anyway, and just massive spending that kind of set things off in a different trajectory. But we're back into a very normal cycle here, right? So obviously the biggest tax strain is always April, but now we're going to expect this September tax strain. So we're going to get that September tax strain. And the other big thing, we talked about this last week, is we're going to get the October tax strain as well. That's going to be much larger than normal. Usually October kicks off the next spending cycle. The fiscal year starts off. That kicks off the next spending cycle. But we're going to have a very large drain in October. So cyclically, September's a bad month. October is going to be even worse than normal, so we're going to see some very flat spending that will definitely flatten things out for quite a while. And just to kind of show you, in context, it was the massive drain in April of 2022 that really kicked off that leg of selling that we saw from. I think we topped in March in 2022 and bottomed ultimately, at least for that leg, in I think December as well. So I think we have, there's enough against this market right now all happening at once, where I think this tax strain can maybe cause a hiccup. And the other thing too is back in June we had a tax strain, right? And I made a video in June saying that, look, statistically, the tax strains in and of themselves, if we isolate just the variable of the tax strain, they're not the largest contributor to the predictive nature of the flows, right? But I do think there's enough of a risk here. And the other thing too that I want to point out, right, is just to kind of show how this looks. So like September of 2019, we had a 40. I don't know if this is showing up on the stream. We had a $47 billion surplus effectively for September. This is just using the daily Treasury statement data, right? So ultimately, more taxes than spending in the month of September by about $47 billion. My man Bill, W.A. Buffo on Twitter posted hat tipping Professor Plum. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. Mike Green, I think it is, sharing the data that Google has $10 billion in taxes that are going to come due in October. So Google alone, and this, Mike, it was Mike Green. Thanks, Eugenio. Yeah. So Google alone has $10 billion, right? You've got Meta, you've got every other tech firm that's in California that has put this delay on for taxes that are all going to hit in October. So you're going to see again, just to put this in perspective, right? This is going to be a massive drain on taxes, right? And it's going to be very similar to kind of what happened in April of 2022, not quite to the magnitude, right? I mean, it was the entire country. This is just California that's dealing with this, but you're going to have so many taxes that get deferred to a certain point, so we're going to see quite the drain. So I think the magnitude of this is enough where there should be a bit of a headwind brewing. And so at this point, I have been getting myself into cash. I've been selling jewelry in the sell-off, and then ultimately looking for about a bounce. I mean, it was a bounce looking towards I think it was 4,500 was I looking for where I'd go to sell. Now, the bounce we've seen is where things get a little difficult, because the bounce we've seen has been pretty darn strong. And so the next chart I want to bring up is our vol shift model that we use. And how we use this vol shift model is it's effectively measuring the potential volatility of the next day in the market, right? So it takes all the volatility measures and says, okay, what sort of volatility should we expect? And I measure volatility really as price variance from the mean, right? So a low volatility day could still be down, but it's down relatively little, right? The range that you might get a move either up or down remains relatively compressed. And so our vol shift model does a pretty good job of kind of indicating when you're going to have that steady climb versus when you're going to potentially start to see some bigger drops. So if I just zoom on in to kind of recent times here, using the vol shift model, the time to sell was when we went from rank 4, which is the most compressed volatility, and in a bullish market that usually means you're just going to inch higher. And then the time to sell or hedge is when you then drop into one of the lower two ranks on and what the rank is just the Gaussian distribution of just that quartile forward returns. So we shrink. It's expecting relatively high volatility. And lo and behold, that's what we get. What's interesting, though, I wasn't necessarily expecting this, particularly before options expiration, is we did jump back to rank 3, which now kind of means that maybe we actually do see a bit of a grind higher here until September OPEX. So things have definitely gotten a little bit more tricky than expected. I haven't sold my final leg in terms of my positioning, so I've been holding on. My strategy now is when vol shift finally rolls over, I will sell, because I think there's still a compelling enough reason to believe that come September, and I mean, Deep MMT is calling this as well, come mid-September, maybe even early September, we're going to start to see selling, and we should anticipate, based only even on Deep MMT, that we're going to get a leg or two lower here into October. But then also just knowing the macro scenario, I think the risk is even more heightened, more escalated, and so that's where I'm at on markets. Hopefully that satiated the that met the promise of where we were at in markets and where I think we're headed, and kind of how I'm seeing things play out from here. I don't know, Bijou. Any thoughts on markets?
Yeah. Me? No, not really. I did Appreciate your market recap videos earlier in the week too. But you know, what can I say? I'll tell you what I'm doing is I'm taking screenshots of your predictions as receipts.
Nice.
I hope like in September and October I can go back and you know, pretend I'm some nerd who's trying to prove you wrong, and yeah. That's what I'm doing with this information. I'm interested in actually looking backwards at what people were saying in the past. How about that? Yeah. Although a lot of people who get some of the market calls really bad and wrong, they don't actually go back and review and update their knowledge. It's something that I would kind of do. So I'm gonna do that.
That is always the most frustrating thing. I mean, you just see people get things wrong, and there's no there's no acknowledgement.
Gosh, why did I get it wrong?
Yeah.
Never mind. Go forward. Buy gold. Blah, blah, blah.
Buy gold. I love that. I see plagiarism in there. Is that a reference to me plagiarizing something? I hope not.
Not sure, man. Not sure. Oh yeah, my denominator. He's not doing this stuff though. There's no the denominator does a lot of Hunter-y political flow stuff too, but there's no plagiarism going on here. We're looking at the same data.
Oh, Bijou copying my work. Okay. Yeah. No. You know, okay. I do listen to the Norminator, but I mean, there's nothing more for entertainment purpose. Not that I think he's off too far.
It's not. I don't have a finance or investing channel, Ghost. So it's just what I was getting at there was that
I think he was joking. I think he was joking. I get the joke now. I get the joke. I get the joke.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah. Got me.
That's where we're at with markets, guys. We'll see how things play out. We'll do an update in a few weeks. Obviously, over on patreon.com/MMT macro trader. I don't have the link ready, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. There's a site over there. I do have the Patreon. If you're an active trader, active investor, we got all sorts of tools, multiple updates each week. The dashboard now up and running. Yeah, all that good stuff. Now, let's get back. You want to get back to some debating, or do you want to talk? You want to talk markets some more? What's the thought here?
Well, you know, just on the activist side, I'm not going to argue with you. You have to talk to every person at a time. But the activists, the high level activists that I would talk to, they implicitly understand Randy Ray and what the private sector brings to the economy, and they all are Steve Keen aware, and you know. So, but I get it that there are some just sort of loose cannons around on Twitter or wherever, just sort of promoting MMT because they've understood the more important part, how a strong government supports labor, and they're all about supporting labor.
Yep.
And you know, so if they want the government to actually own the whole means of production and do things that way, you know, I would say, well, you know, good luck to them. It's never going to happen, but it does. It's going to fly over the head, or just going to be completely laughed at and ignored by, you know, people in the more MMT finance space. And I think I'm kind of okay with that. I'm kind of okay if the, you know, sort of hair on fire type activists are just doing their thing, and the more markets and private sector focused MMT is doing their thing. And, you know, I don't think we should dunk on each other and get too aggro.
Do you think
if they say something dumb, maybe just you know, gently correct them?
Do you think the hair on fire activists help though?
Yeah, because they are completely ignored by the finance people.
But they're not. I mean, they're clearly not. It's clearly
triggering them a little bit.
Well, no, I mean, it's clearly what's being responded to, right?
That's okay.
No, but
it's like they say, almost like no publicity is bad publicity, and this is what I would call, you know, turmoil and churn and intellectual foment, and you know, you can ignore it. Does it give MMT a bad reputation? I'm not really sure I care much about that. It makes people think, and also they're talking maybe more to their crowd. They're trying to rile up their base of support and get people interested in, and from a totally different angle to any investors or market practitioners, I think. But like I said, I could be wrong about all that and that. But Twitter is a bit of a waste of time unless you're like like yourself, if you're using it in a kind of smart way. To get engagement that's serious and knows both sides and speaks both sides. And,
So here's the tweet that kicked off a lot of the discussion. Bob Murphy thanking the MMTers that Nina Turner knows. I don't know who Nina Turner is. I see her all over the place, but I don't know who this person is. Do you know who she is?
She used to be she's in the squad. She's part of the squad. She used to be in Congress and has.
Oh, she was in Congress? Okay.
Tried a couple of times and
senator.
Okay.
Okay.
I was a senator. Yeah. She tried to run for Congress, but was outdone by some, more DNC backed people. So, and the big thing that he who shall not be named, and others go on about Nina Turner is that she's a sellout, like AOC, and but also she's just dumb because she always does it's your hard-earned tax dollars at work kind of angle.
She says that.
Oh yeah. So she's like a right winger from that perspective, but she has no idea. She doesn't realize it's a right wing talking point, But she's a total Bernie bro, Bernie girl. So that's her background.
Danger Zone, real quick. Sorry to cut you off. Are you talking about the Harvey? The is that who you mean? I'd be interested on his take on socialism. That'd be interesting. All right, now that I know who Nina Turner is, if you got a link for it, man, if you can find it, drop it in chat or hit me up on Twitter, DM. I'd be interested in listening to that. I like him. He's got a good. He's a good listen. Good personality. All right.
Who is this?
I forget Harvey is his last name. I'm forgetting his first name. He goes by the Cowboy Economist.
Oh yeah.
He does a lot on.
John T. Harvey.
John T. Harvey on exchange rates and stuff like that. Yeah. All right. So Nina Turner says that you get the MAGA Barbie. Who do you think funds the government, Nina? The government itself issues its currency. And I it dawned on me when Colin Roche was having the back and forth. I had a few questions, and then the Applied MMT guys kind of came in as well. It dawned on me that I don't think he actually. I mean, what bothers me about him is I disagree with MMT. I don't think he actually does. I mean, maybe he does. I think he disagrees with the way MMTers frame the argument, right? Because in one sense, you could look at who funds the government, right? And we all know what's being asked there, right? What's being asked there is taxpayers, right? It's the money, the Margaret Thatcher, the money comes, there's no such thing as public money, only a taxpayer money or whatever, right? Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing, right? We know MMT tells us, no, that's not how it works. You've got it backwards, right? But the flip side of this is if you don't think about it in money terms, in nominal terms, right? But you think about it in real terms, then in a very real sense, the people do fund the government, right? It is the private sector that the government is provisioning itself from. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so from that perspective, it's the private sector that funds, right? That funds the government.
That's what all the good MMTers understand. Like my brother, who doesn't really do any social media or anything like that. He works for the government, and when I explained MMT to him, he immediately got it. And one time I just remember talking to him, and he's just nodding along, and he's an intelligent guy, by the way. He just doesn't nod at me just because I'm his older brother. but I'm like, so like when you're at home, you're in the public sector, and in the morning you go on the train, you're still in the public sector, and then when you get into the office at the Ministry for Primary Industries where he works, then he's kind of in the. Sorry, I got that around the wrong way. He's in the private sector on the train. Then when he gets into the office, he's in the public sector. Yeah. And then when he quits work and goes home on the train, he's back in the private sector. So it's like, in real terms, his labor time and all that stuff is funding the government in real terms, and then the government funds him in monetary terms. And so that's what I thought Mr. Roche was on about, and on that sense, we shouldn't kind of just bulldog attack people like that, but find a point of unity, find a point of agreement with them to start with. It's far better than just kind of alienating them.
Yeah, well, that guy wants to be alienated. There was no. I mean, I tried. I mean, I tried it. It dawned us somewhere.
Yeah,
in
I
this.
tried too, but
I tried. I think
too, I give up at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it was obvious that he just wanted to disagree.
Well, I gave him a like, but he's not going to like me back. So,
yeah.
At that point,
Derek, I mean, I agree. He just, and it's, I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, he's so big, and again, I don't disagree that the point of the government provision in itself should be to create a private sector with superpowers, like, right? I mean, that is definitely an aim that the government should have, is to make sure that the private sector is, all the adjectives that you want to throw at it, all the progressive adjectives that you want to throw at it. That's that's what you want the government to be doing for the private sector. But at the end of the day, it is the private sector that is going to create a lot of the goods and services and that we're going to want. And I think I guess that is just where that is where.
You just don't want to outsource your military into the.
Well, there's a lot of things. And someone asked at some point in this thread, they go something to the extent of, progressives say that monopolies are bad and they lead to all the bad things monopolies lead to, but then the progressives also say that they want to monopolize certain private sector stuff, right? And I'm like, yes. And here's the thing: that is an absolutely fair discussion to have, and this is where particularly the MMT activists I get a little upset with that say something to the extent of that if you disagree with me that all let's take the hot topic right now of student loan debt, right? All student loan debt should be wiped off the books, right? And if you disagree with me, you're a murderer, right? But it is still to me. I have what I think is the right answer, right? But it is still a discussion to be had, right? Because no matter what, there are consequences when you move things from the private sector into the public sector, and it's a worthwhile discussion to have, and it should never be an immediate discussion, right? An immediate decision that is just done.
Dismissal of someone else's point of view. I mean, Steve Keen has talked a bit about how monopolies are actually good because they reduce the costs for the consumers. So you can tolerate some monopolies, but there is obviously just a whole lot of terrible shit that happens when you get concentrated power, and just you're kind of crushing labor who are working just then at this stage for just grocery money only. But it's more nuanced than just got to just get rid of monopolies. I think it's more about euthanizing the rentiers, if you ask me. That's something that I don't think anyone should argue or disagree about.
By euthanizing them, you mean that as a metaphor, correct?
I mean in the Keynesian sense. Yeah. Euthanize rentier. That's a phrase that you'll hear from, progressive economists. And like Michael Hudson will talk about how that's every classical economist would agree on the need to euthanize the rentiers. But going back to that, it's discussion on monopolies and all that. It's interesting because when you ask Warren Mosler about public banking. At one point he agrees with me that we can just pay bankers a decent wage to do the job of clearing payments and assessing risk, but then so he'll agree on that, but then he'll say but you might not want to have all banking to be public sector because it gets politicized, and if your politics is not all like everyone's all sort of happy and in agreement and unified, and you've sort of got de facto communism or one party rule because everyone's just happy and everyone's agreement, and there's really all the just nuances of policy are just that. They're just little tiny nuances. I'm talking about like a tiny island in the Pacific somewhere. That's the only place where this would happen, where there's no intense political debate. Everyone's on the same page. Then it makes sense to have a fully sort of public banking sector, because the politicization of who gets credit, who doesn't, who gets denied, and all that sort of stuff sort of gets taken away. It becomes a non-issue. But Mosler, I think, would say that you got to be careful. You got to be careful about what you're going to bring in fully in the public sector, and make sure that it can't get politicized. But it's not that clear cut and simple, right? Because you could talk about the military. It's like, people would, some insane people might have the argument, well, then why would you have a public military and police in the public sector? Why not just make it all community policing and all that? Because then it doesn't get politicized, And I would say, well, yeah.
The Austrians make that argument.
The Austrians will make that argument.
Yeah,
You should have it like more community policing, and they would probably agree with us that you disarm the police, depower them, but you can have more police if they're all just happy people who are like public servants and all that, but sort of working out of the private sector or whatever, the government hires them or something like that, or contracts community policing people who are just really nice people, right? They're just helping and protecting and serving. But it's not the real world, man. It's not real politics. So you got to balance a trade-off between having some things in the private sector where government can't politicize it, but then there's a hell of a lot of other things that are just basics that are needed in the public sector, because you've got to, in a sense, not have depoliticization, which is the whole neoliberal project. All the I mean, I want to make a case that all the bad things the government does, well, neoliberal governments, I should say, not the others, all the bad things that neoliberal governments do, who want to see a robust private sector, come from such depoliticization, the opposite of what Mosler was talking about as regarding public banks. So it's just more nuanced than all these simple activist talking points. But I still appreciate the activists, man. I'm not gonna heavily criticize them. I'm gonna comment and try and correct them where I can, basically. Yeah. Is that confusing for you?
No.
Is that too nuanced?
No. I just yeah. It's interesting. Okay, so to kind of have chat.
Don't let personalities rub you the wrong way. But if there's definitely a strong message coming out from MMT activists, I think we have a duty to try and correct them and get them at least not making terrible hair on fire kind of statements.
Yeah, and that's all. I mean, that's if and to their credit too. I mean, to their defense, this is hard for these words to come out of my mouth, but to their defense, to kind of play devil's advocate, to a certain extent, and again, this is just the dynamics of the way monetary systems play out, or capitalist monetary economics plays out. We are, using that analogy, we are the frogs in water that's boiling, and we don't realize, right? We don't, I mean, it's kind of like social or climate activists and whatnot, right? I mean, there were, we would have called kind of climate activists nut jobs 20 years ago, saying the sky is falling, yada yada yada. But we all looked at them as nut jobs, and then lo and behold, 20 years later, the sky is falling, right? That is. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think that's a good devil's advocate.
So
they're not the devil there.
Yeah. With that being said, though, and I think where the messaging goes wrong is just simply that the other side isn't necessarily the other side. There's such a quick knee-jerk reaction to impute malice to the other side, right? I mean, I think the other side thinks that what they're thinking, thinks that what they're thinking is going to be helpful, right? And if austerity did in fact bring prosperity, right? Like if it was a necessary thing, right? The way they see it. Hold on. I mean, if it was necessary, the way that they see it, right, from like an Austrian, if the Austrians were right in their world, then we would be the ones that would be imposing more harm on the long run, right? We would be the ones that would be, that are essentially saying, no, we can do this spending forever, and there's not going to be any consequence, analogous to the climate deniers 20, 30 years ago. No. Climate stuff is not man-made, whatever argument they came up with. Obviously, though, we know it's not that way, right? And my argument is that the best way to demonstrate it is with the data, with the numbers, and not yelling. I mean, obviously, you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I do for your audience, right? But some people are not going to look at data, and some people emotionally need the yelling. I mean, that's the way the human brain works, right? There are some people who are a bit more autistic, like you and me, and there are some people who just need the emotional argument. They need the narrative, and they need the story. But I think they still can be moderated and tempered, so they're not just alienating and pissing off everyone else, especially people who actually do find their way into government and have to, make policy decisions and have to cope with the mainstream sort of paradigms. And you need to support those people because they're in a hellhole, right? They're in the. I mean, my father was a politician. I'll just remind anyone who doesn't know my background, and he was such a good guy, and politics was so awful. If you stay in politics too long, it's like you're just sniffing up evil all the day. He would talk about people who get in an elevator with, and it's like you could almost smell the evil coming off of them. I don't want to get too metaphysical about that. It's not.
I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. We've all dealt with those people. I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
I don't know if everyone has, but these are really powerful people.
No, yeah, okay. I mean, for those of us who have been in leadership positions throughout their life, had to have deal with. I get exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes,
But then. But
they're not evil in the sense. I mean, the reason they're evil is they're sociopaths, right? I mean, it's not.
Yes. That's probably fair.
Probably
fair. But and they're making decisions not from a moral standpoint so much as just what's in it for me. But they all they've got, and they bundle along an ideology along with that. So that sort of buttresses them. So it's not just Donald Trump like transactional what's in it for me, but it's that plus because they're smart sociopaths, they've also bundled along a whole, right-wing ideology and all that. But I'll tell you one thing about the austerity thing. It's like you can kind of be a bit nuanced with an Austrian schooler or someone like that. I guess this is hypothetical, because you do need austerity in some things, right? We need to be a little bit more careful about how we burn fossil fuels and wreck the environment and just create a whole lot of wasteful stuff that no one needs. And so you do need austerity in production of rubbish and crap. so if you've got a political economy that's incentivizing people to just make mad apps everywhere that burn up CPUs for no good reason and create a lot of wasteful stuff that's not recyclable, that's by design. The whole defective by design movement is defective by design. People are I'm talking about the free software advocates and that, or people who do hardware appliance stuff. They there's a sort of merger there between hardware and software people in some of the discourse. Okay, so they are pointing out things are defective by design, and it's just to generate money and profits for people, and they're deliberately damaging products and damaging software, like expiration dates and all that sort of thing are built in, and so we could do without a whole lot of all that. We can have austerity in defective by design, and you can have austerity in a whole lot of things, which would end up being really good for the world and for humanity and for all the other people, things and entities in the biosphere that are kind of suffering because of anthropogenic activity, right? So it's this. So yeah, I think. But an MMT activist is coming from the monetary systems angle, and so when they say austerity, everyone knows what they're talking about, and there's not so much confusion about that, and so I don't mind that kind of screaming rhetoric. At least maybe I can tolerate it more than you. I don't know. Because I know it's coming from a good place, and I know that. Oh, geez,
but I don't. Here's the thing: I question if it's coming from a good place. I don't know.
Do you?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of them it is.
Now you're talking about seeing and looking into people's souls and all that.
Well, yeah. I mean, so would your side, right? If it is or it isn't, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's coming from a good place from some of them. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Well,
but I mean, some of these guys.
Really,
I don't know any of these guys. So, personally.
Yeah.
So, if you do, and
guys and girls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the United States where I think this sort of MMT activism is really, has taken off. So down here in my way, we're a lot more reserved and.
It is interesting. So this is kind of weird. When you look at kind of what neoliberalism has done to the politics and particularly the economics of the Western world, right? In the U.S., they failed to get the fiscal side under their control, right? So, fiscally, the U.S. has been far more expansionary than any of the other Western countries, right? But what they absolutely did is they got the messaging that you don't help poor people, right? Like, I mean, they drove that home, and in America, there's no desire, right? It's not a virtue to want to help the bottom half first, right? But in Europe, and in so much of the rest of the Western world, the neoliberals were able to fully implement the neoclassical economic paradigm to just not spend, right? And so, but there's such a desire to help the bottom 50%, right? So
right.
On both sides, we're both just screwed, right? Like, right. So I mean, it is where, I get it. Going all the way back though, I want to Ghost on the Half Shell. You had said something that at some point, people just aren't going to listen to data. I do feel like though, if you're going to win them over, the only way you can win them over. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. You can obviously win them over proselytizing, right? I mean,
right.
churches work. A sermon works, right?
Right?
But I think the way to do it that's intellectually honest and that will sustain and give people the ability to continue to grow in their understanding is with the data, right? I mean, it is with the scientific.
The backing of the story is really important. I think down the road, that's so important. I mean, I agree with you. It can hook the autistic types really nice,
right? Yeah.
But as far as the emotional, moral, spiritual arguments, it backs those up. And what the worst thing that can happen is when you have an argument for some sort of form of welfare that isn't backed by good data. Like, I'm thinking of UBI here. Yeah. And you just go full bore on that, and it's just going to be such ruination later when the data shows that you've been wrong, and you sort of have to, you lose your credibility and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I do worry about. That's why the whole sort of communist, Marxist sort of movements and all that, it sort of were always doomed, and they sort of never worked because they had some good ideas for emancipation of the working class, but they still didn't really understand all of the politics, and a lot of that comes down to understanding systems and understanding all the boring stuff that data can help you with, and modeling can help you with. And if you're not prepared to sort of do that, then you're going to have a good story, a good narrative, a good political narrative to tell. I was going to say by luck. It's not by luck. It's because your heart might be in the right place, and you are correct. But you're going to make stupid policy decisions, and so this is what it came down to in the UK, right? With Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn and them, they had a chance. They had a chance to get rid of the Tories and to do some real progressive politics. But what did they do? Just totally ignore Bill Mitchell, totally just go all sort of, quasi neoclassical on their economics, and talking about all the tax pay-falls and that. And so they just, I really do think that infected some of the Brexit sort of thinking and rhetoric from the Labour Party neoliberals too, by the way. But I don't know. I mean, I can't say for sure. But this just ruined the whole opportunity there. So it was like, had a potential with some great leadership in the UK that had the backing of the unions and the workers and all the traditional people that might vote Boris Johnson. These are like non-fascists, Bernie bros who would vote for Trump. Those kind of people in the UK were like, they would have in the past supported Tony Benn and Neil Kinnock and Jeremy Corbyn, but they were people who could easily vote for Boris Johnson because they're just sick of neoliberalism. So there's that dynamic too, which what do they say? Interesting times that we live in, or something. Well, what's the Chinese curse? That you live in interesting times.
Speaking of interesting times, what do you got next? I got something I want to share with you. My buddy Adam,
Go ahead.
from Sitch and Adam, put up a poll.
I have so many things from Sitch and Adam that I didn't get to talk about.
We can hit it. We can bring him back up. He brought up a poll. He did a poll to his audience for me after talking. He was listening to our follow-up stream about what is the definition of capitalism that you would use, right? He got 1,500. He got 1,500 responses. Option number one, an economic system, capitalism, an economic system designed to distribute resources based on supply and demand, prices, and private property. Or number two, economic system designed to exploit workers for the benefit of wealthy elites. How do you generally view? And I know that this might not be the perfect two definitions you could choose, but given
I like those two as a contrast.
Yeah. Perfect as a contrast. 93% to 7% was the distribution that most people think of capitalism is some sort of system to optimize the distribution of resources. And I think that was going back to our discussion of,
right. So those are the people where capitalism is correct by definition.
Yeah, that anything good is capitalism. Anything good that
completely
comes out of the market.
Ignoring the rentiers.
Yeah,
and they're completely ignoring the fact that the labor market is an unfair game.
I think,
which is why I say Warren Mosler is a Marxist. He's the best Marxist you can get.
I think what Adam's getting at though is that it's
the Zeitgeist, the Geist,
it's
the way people think.
Yeah, that capitalism is. I think what he's getting at, and it's kind of maybe the same thing that I'm getting at with kind of some of the activists, is when they say they're anti-capitalists, right? And then they make their anti-capitalist argument, which is
the anti-definition number two mostly.
Correct.
That's the thing.
Right.
And everyone else is in society, the normies are thinking number one.
No, not the normies. No. Not the normies though, right? Because I think what most people think of capitalism is what we would just understand as the private sector, right? In kind of MMT sectoral balance terms, right? Is that,
I don't know.
Well, that's what it is, right? The private. That's what this is saying.
No, it's like you're saying. No, this is the whole discussion. Is the definition matters, because it's not one or the other. There's two definitions there.
No, there's only one. I think that's what the.
No, that's a biased sampling from Adam's audience,
which is mostly. It's 60-40. It's 60-40.
Well, anyway, just a lot of people who are who call themselves anti-capitalist or want to see something called post-capitalism. Okay, the post-capitalists may be those who just absolutely fine with private enterprise and fair markets, not just carte blanche free markets where you're free to screw over workers and people and use the fact that the labor market is a sort of a biased game system to your benefit as opposed to whoever you're employing. So I mean, I think these definitions really matter, and yeah, I understand that it's lopsided in terms of what people think in their heads the word capitalism means, and so that's like it's the same thing with religion and all that, and a lot of other things where the dominant discourse involves one concept, but a far more nuanced and important politically for justice, for a decent society, decent civilization. The other definition matters, even if it's not understood or in common use. And so, I think it's really important to have a different word for those two different forms of political economy. And unfortunately, we don't have two different words for those two different aspects of political economy. And it's like I don't know what to do about it, but except to I'm glad that you give me this microphone every Wednesday to
Thursday morning for you.
Thursday morning for me to maybe talk about these things because it's really important. I mean, geez.
So this is where then I think it's very important. Okay, that's why I think it's. I don't want to.
If you want a decent, thriving private sector, if you want that, don't screw the workers over. Their wages are paying for your, the wage is a cost for one firm, but for all firms, the wage is a benefit, and all of that stuff. It's so important to bring employers in on an equal footing with the employees, on the equal footing with the employers, and have a sort of justice angle, and not just sort of go at. Not just to think that capitalism is all great because it allows private enterprise and sort of creativity and all that, because you can have all of that in a completely different relation between employer and employee. It doesn't have to be the Marxist type of capitalism for that. And then maybe that's where you need a sort of a different word for it. I don't know.
I think
if I had a good word, I'd use it.
I think what needs to happen is that those activists, MMT activists who are saying, capitalism has failed us, yada, yada, yada. I think those are the ones that need to change the word capitalism to something else, right? Whatever.
I agree.
Okay. Whatever
because it's losing battle for them to not that they need to change their rhetoric because they're the ones that will, be prepared to do all the hard work. They're not going to get buy-in from it.
Yeah. And then I think the other the other knock against that line of argument too is then immediately they're really betraying MMT as well when they use if you're going to use capitalism to mean worker exploitation, that's fine. Just make sure you're defining it as worker exploitation, out of the gate.
Yes.
But then you betray MMT when you don't loop back around and explain that what MMT is explaining at its base case is the that framework for analysis for understanding an economic system that is public and private, right? And so when they say then get rid of capitalism, the framing gets heard as we want government control and monopoly of all effective of all private sector activity, right?
That is the risk.
And I
think full bore socialism, which was never going to ever work.
Yeah. So
it might be fine, like a libertarian utopia, the socialist utopia might be right, but it can't work if not everyone wants it, right? If everyone wants it and you got a small little island where everyone's happy doing something like that, then it can work. But when you've got a society, a huge society with all sorts of diverse opinions and all that, I think you're right. I think it's going to be. I mean, who knows if this will ever happen? But what you said makes so much sense to me, that it's much smarter to define your terms right, and to make a clear separation, so that you're not just arguing at sort of for cross purposes or counterproductive arguments, or you say anti-capital, okay, you might know what that means, but someone else sort of doesn't get it, and you're lacking the nuance. And I think in some sense it is a kind of a betrayal of MMT, although betrayal is a bit of a strong word. But I know what you mean. It's like, yeah, let's move everything into the public sector. It sounds like a great idea. It's just like just hold, whoa, maybe think a little bit more about that.
I'm gonna cybernetics. I'm gonna engage here. The people demand a revolution. I actually, this is where I just think I don't think people really want a revolution right yet. I think that's part of the. What's up?
Normies, soccer mums and all that. They're not.
Oh yeah.
I
mean, actually, that's actually the problem. I think that's why maybe even so much so that see, I don't think MAGA is a revolution, though, right? I mean, the whole point of MAGA is like we want to get rid of any progress whatsoever. We don't want a revolution, and it's winning, right? I actually think that's the risk. So here's the thing. Then going back to now to say that I'm actually going to agree with the activists. I mean, I do think that there is a massive risk to the to the socioeconomic standing of almost everyone in the Western civilization, right? I mean, there is a massive risk, and people do need to wake up and all that sort of stuff. And that there will be a desire for a revolution if the progress isn't made now to get in front of the risks that lay in front of us. And I think one of the biggest risks is the economic risk that we have, the massive amount of private debt in this system that is that the beneficiaries of are contained within 1 or 2% of the population. That's not a sustainable system. But you don't realize that. Yeah, I mean, you don't realize the collapse until it's too late, right? I mean, in fact, on the way up, that's when people are the happiest. So, to me, that is the risk: is that we're not having a revolution. Yeah, I don't think people are demanding a revolution. I mean, so much so, we haven't had a non-boomer president for the last 3, 4, 5 presidencies where we could have had a non-boomer president. I mean, the president's. God, 81 or something like that. I mean, I think he actually came over on the Titanic. I don't know if he's that old. I think he had tickets on the maiden voyage of the Titanic. I think. Can I maybe be sympathetic to cybernetics there? I mean, I'm not sure where cybernetics is coming from, because I've cybernetics. I don't know your background and all that, but are you arguing for sort of revolution? I think MMT. Okay, people are going to really probably hate me for saying this or think it's cringe. I don't know. I don't care. But MMT is a revolution. Come on. It's a massive paradigm shift. Now it's a sort of niche area, right? We're talking about monetary operations, but what does a revolution in intellectual thought look like when it's confined to state currency monopoly and monetary operations? I'm telling you, it looks like MMT. Now, that doesn't mean MMT is the revolution of our time and our generation, okay? Because there's all the other ecological economics and behavioral economics has also been pretty revolutionary in a lot of senses, and also other politics. I think neoliberalism, is perhaps dying. So that's another kind of a slow burner revolution that's happening. So there are pockets of revolution all over the place. I think what I agree with Douglas on is that it's not going to be one big giant revolution like October 1917 or anything like that, or the Cuban Revolution, because we're not slaves. Now, there's an interesting
Well, okay, okay, don't get me wrong, we are wage slaves, most of us, but we're not treated horrifically by neoliberals, just sort of horrifically. Not trying to downplay it or anything, but it relates to this other interesting piece that I got from is it Professor Plum? You're talking about Mike Green there.
Yeah.
But anyway, in his Substack, he gave a link to some guy, and it just was like one of those things I can't resist kind of just reading because it seems so nutty. But it was he links to some article where some guy's going on. It doesn't look very good academic wise or anything, but it was just sort of interesting and curious. He's saying that you don't get revolutions until everyone is kind of happy. And I was like, what? It's like one of those, you got it backwards type of moments. It's like, wait a minute, have I got things backwards? Don't you have to have people really being oppressed and miserable to have a revolution? And this dude, like I said, I'm not vouching for it. I'm not saying it's good research or anything. It was just so weird that it was thought provoking, and so I was tempted to actually go into it a little bit deeper, but I just didn't have the time. But the idea was that you're more likely to get sort of revolutionary kind of moments when people are all happy, and I just thought that just completely just ignored so much history. Like it was just seemed pretty insane view, because in the past, the Haitian Revolution, Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, and all that weren't all just sort of bourgeois things, but it's often the bourgeois. It's often people who have some influence, some say in society, something that the people who turn the politicians into sheep. Okay, this is critical. It's the people who can turn the politicians into sheep who have a lot of power and in a democracy. And the other thing is, of course, you don't want to be totally ahistorical, because in the past it was possible for pitchforks and the peasants to rise up and foment a revolution, because it was just, you didn't have a massive military, massive armed police force and that kind of fascist undertone of neoliberalism to combat. And so in the modern world, I would really urge revolutionary thinking people to take a look at all that. Don't take your revolution from history, make it new, and it's got to be intellectual for the most part, and peaceful, because that just works. It works. And you just don't need any better example of how revolutions can work than science. And although science is a nice clinical, data-driven, empirical kind of activity, it's not to say you can't have that also a little bit in politics. It's not as fast, it's not as crisp, but you can have intellectual revolutions in politics. Like what I said before, euthanize the rentiers. Okay, everyone, when they want to understand that's not literal in meaning, can understand that it's an important thing to have happen, and can the bourgeois, the normies, the ones that all the right wingers hate, all the left wingers hate, they are a massive force here, because they can turn politicians into sheep. Politicians are like followers, not leaders, in a very big sense, in any kind of a semblance of a representative democracy. Even if it's not perfect, it's still the case that politicians are followers, not leaders, and we want them following the soccer mums and normies, not Wall Street and Silicon Valley tycoons. And that's your problem in the USA, right? Is the money in the politics. It's who's the wolf leading the sheep there. It's people with a lot of power and money. So but everyone understands that. I think everyone in the USA understands that, and so you've got this revolutionary potential there. But how it plays out is going to be way. I mean, now I'm sounding like a futurist, which I don't pretend to be. Right? I'm just giving you my totally uneducated opinion on all this politics. But I think the revolution of our time, or in our future generation, will be partly driven by climate change and ecological catastrophe, and MMT is part of that, and telling and showing people how you deal with that in terms of the monetary mechanics and dynamics. That it doesn't have to turn into a financial crisis. an ecological crisis shouldn't have to turn into a financial crisis because, we're not on gold, for God's sake. We don't have to all go out and mine gold to run the economy. Make sense? Or at least a little bit of sense?
Makes some sense, man.
I don't know.
Makes some sense.
Good.
My kids used to play soccer, Ty, but
yeah. Anyway,
that makes my wife a former soccer mom.
Yeah. I've got other things. I've got other things on my list. Lots of things.
Let's see.
More on the liquidity.
Liquidity.
I want to get rid of that word. If the word I want to rebrand or get rid of, liquidity.
Yeah.
Liquidity drains. Liquidity drains. I'm really hating this, man.
So
I want to keep. Here's the thing. I want to keep liquidity in physics. Okay, that's a good concept. But in the MMT dictionary, I got it up on screen. I don't know, Douglas, if you want to. I reckon we need to be like full on MMT sometimes, just with a bit of the playful language. When you get into a discourse with people, they start talking about liquidity drains and Hunter-Terry's pumps and sumps and things. Try to inject a little bit of playfulness in your language is what I reckon. And so instead of liquidity, talk about marking up the bank account. So it would be markuppiness or writability, because you're just generally writing money into existence. Bankability or scorekeepiness. So
yeah.
I just can't stand all the metaphor.
The bad metaphors
that have to do with.
Yeah.
And of course we can't get rid of it in MMT because we have to talk about the flows, not the stocks, right? That relates to Mr. Roche.
Yeah.
I was thinking this, right? It's like, was it Joan Robinson or maybe even it was Samuelson who said something like, economics is the art of confusing stocks with flows.
Yeah.
So it's only half true, right? Because economics is also the art of only looking at one side of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
But I can go even more. I could go like full. Steve Keen realized it later on. It was not just double entry. He actually listened to Randy Ray, I think, at one point, and had to admit it was quadruple entry bookkeeping. So economics is the art of ignoring 3 quadrants of the balance sheet. But then I listened to the man for all times, the greatest MMT promoter, Mr. Bob Murphy from the Austrian school. And I listened to him, and I'm thinking, I can go Giga Randall Ray on you, and it's like actually hexadecimal balance sheets, or
Yeah.
Because we're ignoring all of the balance sheets that exist on Mars, which we totally have to rely on. We've got actually an MMT system, so it's a 16 quadrant or sixth hex quadrant balance sheet. I think that's where I'll leave it at that. Unless there's life on Europa that we're depending on for 16-dimensional balance sheets.
Probably is.
Probably is.
This is why.
Those are stealthy balance sheets.
This is why when I was using the convergent cross mapping, I was having so many difficulties with the shadow manifolds finding the right number. I just didn't know if there was life on Europa or not, and that was a very hidden manifold stuck deep in the recesses of the frozen tundra of Europa. And that was it. I mean, there was actually I was able to prove that there was life on Europa because it was 6 manifolds as opposed to the 3 that I had just anticipated with my modeling.
I know, it's amazing what happens when you just move up a few dimensions.
It really is. Yeah. This is kind of interesting. Going back to liquidity, okay. This always trips me up a little bit too. Just kind of thinking of liquidity, because I get what they're saying. When you talk about market liquidity specifically, and you talk about like the liquidity drain, right? I mean, what they're really saying is what they're really worried about is like those 2008 events, right, where you're just going to get a fire sale of assets, right?
Okay.
And then when you get that fire sale of assets, I don't even know how to articulate this.
Have a go. I don't really understand it either, but what they're talking about.
How do I?
Something
Okay.
to think about later.
Okay, maybe this is a way to kind of put it, right. So you get this valuation of these assets, right? You know, I mean, how can you have a stock market one day, right? That's the stock market tracks flows, yada yada yada. You know, we kind of understand what where the price of the stock market comes from. And then all of a sudden, overnight, the value of the stock market crashes, right, in half or whatever, right, and the value of all assets, crash. And it's not like from a, from kind of an MMT sectoral balance standpoint that the government just came in and taxed half the, half the private, right, half of the private sector net financial assets out of the system, right. To them, then that was a liquidity event, right? There was a lack of another buyer that just devalued these assets, right?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can get that. Lack of a buyer, yeah, lack of someone with enough liquidity to come into the market to.
But okay, I just something's not clicking. Like, yeah, I guess because all the quote unquote liquidity, I think in that instance, the liquidity that they're understanding is liquidity that is dollars that are trapped in illiquid assets that would need to get sold to
liquid assets.
Yeah, that would have to become okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what it has to be. So once they define that, then I'm just what the problem I have is when it moves over into central banking and the banking system and where's the liquidity?
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, should I just fire off a few comments in their chats to let off some steam?
There's something wrong on the internet. I need to fix it. Yeah. Always.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, honey.
That's what it boils down to now. Just letting off steam. It's like,
one of the things that came up in chat was Jackson Hole. To be honest, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but I was kind of flipping through some articles while we've been chatting. It sounds like the conclusion to Jackson Hole was that they still don't understand what they're doing, but they're going to continue to do it. I mean, that seems to be the out. That I gotta get a Twitter thread together because at the end of the day, I mean, it seems very clear the Fed has yet to understand that they've got There was someone, I forget who it was, came up on some of the socials that they were talking about, maybe the Fed should just revise their target for inflation upwards. Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't a strong enough view in the markets to get the Fed to do that. But it was interesting because it relates to that clip I sent you and Ryan the other day and Adam, that occasionally I do come across people on the FinTwit side of things or the finance bureau side of things who understand inflation dynamics a little bit the way you presented in Adam's search. And so it's interesting. It's just very interesting that some folks are kind of quasi MMTs. Like we said before, MMTs who just refuse to call it MMT, and they're like, some inflation is actually pretty good and pretty healthy.
Assuming, I mean, if
but they're investors, right? So they're like, well, it's good for them because they're on the interest income side of things. So it's just not the way to do it. Not the way to do it. So it's always a bit cringe. But they can agree with MMT, but it's like in the most regressive manner.
Yeah.
Hey, did you want to? So this Jonathan guy did ask a question, and he was wondering if we could address it on the live stream. I guess he might be a listener.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you're burying this too late.
Yeah.
You want me to read it out and you can respond?
Yeah, let's. I'm going to transition over to your tablet.
I've actually forgotten what the question was.
It's
I'm
on
gonna
your
have to read it.
it's on your screen. Yeah. Oh,
It's on my
okay.
screen,
Oh,
but
I get what you're saying.
I
Okay.
forgot.
Okay.
I'm not prepared to answer it. So you could maybe help me.
Yeah. Let's go. Okay.
This is a longer one, so it's not something that they could type in the live stream chat today. So he says wants to ask a bit of a wild armchair casual MMT question. So it's what determines the value of the currency in the MMT view? Okay, that's a very, very reasonable question. But then it got interesting. He says another way to phrase the question would be what makes a currency worth more or less in monetary terms than other currencies? Okay, so I'm thinking, that's two separate questions. And then reading onwards, my kind of intuitive answer to say that the robustness of the currency issue is taxing authority. I guess it means that's one reason. If there's no taxing authority, currency is useless. Yeah, that sounds good. If these inflationary times, in these inflationary times, it seems to me that oil producers like the Saudis have tremendous power over the value of oil-dependent nations' currencies, in the sense that the Saudis theoretically could raise prices and devalue the currencies of oil-dependent nations. Don't know about that, but to the point of diminishing or maybe even ruining those countries' taxing authority. The ability for a country that is a producer of valued resources such as oil to do this would, I suppose, in turn rely on the robustness of that country's military trade partnerships, in a similar way to how taxing authority works. If this understanding is correct, does that by extension mean that all countries' currencies are essentially pegged to whatever country has the strongest taxing authority / military / trade partnerships? Pretty multi-dimensional question. Do you want to have a go at that, Douglas?
I will have a go in 1 second. You take shot. You take the shot first. I'll be right back.
Okay, so this is for maybe MMT noobs or anyone joining us who doesn't have the background, but yeah, MMT would say that taxes drive a state currency in most countries. Like not all, but some people peg their currency to a foreign currency or to gold or whatever still. But generally, that's where the value of the currency comes from. But it's the fact that we're issuing tax liabilities that need to be paid. Only the government or the private banks that are chartered by the government can issue that currency. It's the only way you can get it, and that's what drives the currency. But that's not price. The price level is a different aspect of that. It's like, well, yeah, but what are other goods? What price in that currency unit do goods and labor and that have? And that is determined by the government policy. What prices the government pays or demands as collateral for lending from the banks that are chartered by the state. And you've got to have both of those, right? This price level comes from both the terms of exchange that the government provides and the terms of lending that the banks, as agents of the state issuing the state currency, provide. And so when you talk about bank money, it's a bit of a cringy thing. It's this units of the state currency, and the bank money can be used to pay taxes. So in all intents and purposes, it's still the state's currency. But the second part, what makes the currency worth more or less than other currencies, is a different question. That's to do with trade. It's also to do with interest rate parity, and also to do with these days currency speculation. So all of those factors determine exchange rates, what your currency exchanges for another. But I've always thought it's better to focus on the real terms of trade, not the currency. So what an MMT understanding does is it allows you to pretty much ignore the exchange rate. It shouldn't be something you really care about, unless you're a financial trader. And that we should get rid of, I don't know, Douglas, I reckon we should just get rid of speculative attacks on currencies. But, takes a bit of an MMT understanding to do all that stuff, right? Something that'll be in the future. I think we go to zero interest rate policy first. That's an easy one. And getting rid of currency speculation that serves no purpose is another. So interest rate parity brings people together in the market for currencies, and they can trade and swap currencies, and they'll settle on an indifference level. But otherwise, if you don't have that mechanism, it'd be like the terms of trade. So what your government says a tomato is worth, and what another government tells you a tomato is worth, will at a sort of a base level determine your exchange rates there. Okay, now there was more to the question about oil, which you might like to address, Douglas. I don't know. To me, yeah, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Yeah. So to me, it's like if you're dependent on a foreign producer of a critical resource, then obviously they're going to be able to influence your price level because you need to import their stuff, and they're going to slap a price on it. MMT says, "Oh, who cares?" So who the hell cares about that? If they're going to gauge up their price of their oil, you can also re-gauge your currency so that your people have the same purchasing power. It's still the case. It doesn't change anything about your real terms of trade. You're still going to be selling your tomatoes, your avocados, or your automobiles in order to get a decent exchange rate for your oil at whatever price. But of course, again, same issue is that if governments don't understand they have control over the gauge of the currency, then they're maybe not going to make the correct fiscal adjustments if a foreign monopoly is fiddling around with the price of the oil that you need. The other thing is about that, though, is it's an interdependent system. The Saudis are dependent on the US as the US is dependent on Saudi oil. So they're only going to be able to mess around with the price of oil to a certain extent before they completely, cause some sort of US warships to head up the Persian Gulf, so to speak. Which is one of Mosley's great lines about the banking LIBOR rate being set in London by these gentlemen, in their gentleman lounges smoking whatever. It's like, don't like the LIBOR rate, go take the Fifth Fleet up the Thames and tell them what you're going to do. So yeah, interdependencies means that foreign monopolies are going to have a little bit of effect on your economy, but you know what the fiscal adjustments are going to be if you're an MMTer. Again, to the point, it's critical information that MMT is made more aware of in policy-making circles, then you can avoid all of the disruptions from foreign monopolies fixing prices. And I think that's it. Too much for me talking. I need someone else to talk.
I'm the only other one that has a mic, so it must be a reference to me. I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the things I can talk about just in terms of relative value. I liked a lot of things Derek was saying. I liked a lot of things that the Ghost in the Half Shell was saying. Relative value is something I've obviously looked a little bit more into. One currency to the next. I mean, at least from the dollar perspective. I think one of the main determinant factors in relative value that a lot of people overlook is the endogenous cycle, particularly because with the U.S., so much of the rest of the world uses the dollar and dollar collateral instruments to create new dollars out of, called euro dollars. And so that can put a lot of downward pressure on the dollar. But I also that's the points Derek was hitting on.
I lost Derek in the chat. Where is he?
Just some of the points he was hitting on were really good to hit on too. There's a big difference between value and stability, right? You can have a currency, currency. I mean, in fact, when it's ironically most destabilizing when the dollar starts shooting higher, right? It's actually when the dollar trends lower where things are most stable. So. Derek coming in the chat. We should start a Sunday live stream where we debate Austrians and limit. Yeah,
I'd have to change my T-shirt. I tend to get a bit sweaty and nervous when people are kind of, making being really argumentative. But But the other thing about the value of the currency I left out is that taxing authority that John O'Ton was talking about is a correct MMT view, but a lot of the ability to tax depends on a kind of a functional society.
Yeah.
Where the government is powerful enough, but also respected enough that you're not going to have like total political chaos and turmoil because the government is, abusing its power. And so it's both the power of the government, but also the not the abuse of power of government. I would also say that supports a tax-driven currency, because when there's an imbalance in either of those, it can go the wrong way, right? If you lose power, you lose the ability to tax, then your currency is not going to be just wanted, right? It's not going to be heavily in demand. Could go down to zero in the extreme, and the other one is if the government is too abusive, well then you get a totally different social dynamic where you can get a coup if you're not the United States. If you're a smaller country and you're being really abusive, and you don't go full fash, then you can have problems as well, I guess. Although that must be really rare in history, right? Most governments don't totally abuse their people to the point that it just completely breaks down society. So that is an important part of the strength of the currency, is the strength of your rule of law. It's something that Douglas is always on about.
So Ty brought in one of the biggest factors for the price of currency in the FX markets, foreign exchange markets, psychological reasons. And Ty,
I would not disagree,
but I guess the psychological reasons are anchored in kind of macro reasons, though, to a certain extent, right? I mean, so like the decisions that traders are making, they're making based on some sort of data-driven analysis, whether it's valid or not, right? So from like a causal.
Yeah, but that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. So you listen to John T. Harvey, who's one of the experts on this. It's right. The traders, where do they get the information? It's sort of a little bit of inside information about where foreign exchange market's going to go. They get it off the journalists, financial journalists. Okay, where do the financial journalists get their information from? They get it off the financial traders.
Okay.
A lot of circular psychology and
all right.
bullshit going on.
Hold on, though. One, Big Dog, Roar and Or, man. Welcome back. Teddy Bruschi as well.
Hey.
Welcome. Big Dog, I know you're always looking for the market update. That happened probably about 15 minutes in. Yeah. If you are looking for that, or anyone else who's tuning in late and are looking for that, we did hit some market stuff. Okay. My thought with the macro data, though, is that is ultimately the determining factor. God, maybe I can talk myself out of this.
No, it's not tautological, Ghost, but it's part of the dynamic that I think John T. Harvey gets. I think there's something in it. I think there's something in it that a lot of the trading is a bit psychological. It's a bit incestuous because they're dealing with these fluctuations and the underlying real terms of trade that is the base. You can look throughout history. You can see what one government, what one nation says their currency is worth compared to another, and just look at it in real terms and make adjustments for like how difficult it is to grow tomatoes in Chile or New Zealand compared to how difficult it is to grow tomatoes in Japan or China. And then otherwise it's the real terms of trade that determines pretty much those exchange rates. But what I think most people get too sidetracked by is the other one, of course, that sort of settles the exchange rate is the interest rate parity principle, and I think it's a lot stronger, and that's just as pure, again, a buyer and a seller coming together in a market and settling on an indifference level where they're happy to exchange. But I think the psychological factor that Ty Keynes is talking about is a third factor, which is just all the speculation, and it's like, who knows where that goes? It can get into a psychological cycle if they see murmurings about a government doing something like imposing more taxes or huge tax cuts, and they come up with their models and they talk about it and debate it, and it all comes out in the wash, and there's some little movement in the exchange rates, right? I mean, and the war in Ukraine, again, big shifts in exchange rates. You get Japan just murmuring about maybe increasing interest rates for a little bit or something, or doing yield curve control. You can get a little change in the exchange rate with the yen. And so all those things, they tend to just sort of settle down back to the mean, revert to the mean afterwards.
That's what I'm saying, I guess, like the trend, right? I mean, if you were looking to put a position in, right, the underlying trend is ultimately determined by macro. I mean...
Macro, yeah. I'd agree.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Then what are the main macro drivers? Let me ask you this. You got country one. They have 100 units of their currency that they use, that circulate and all that sort of stuff, right? And they got country two, and they're trading, they're doing their trade, and country two also has 100 units of their currency that are floating around, right? And they're using this to trade back and forth, and they each have floating exchange, the whole bit. And then country two decides, just kind of overnight, and assuming there's no other, like that domino effect from this, but they just decide that they're going to add a couple zeros. So now they've got 10,000 currency units, right? Yep. And so if those currencies were trading 1-to-1, right? So country one currency and country two currency were trading 1-to-1, and they were each 100, but now all of a sudden there's 10,000 in country two. Would it be trading 100-to-1 the next day?
Yeah. I would say pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how those market dynamics play out in real time, but it'd have to be pretty much the next day. I mean, the thing about that is such a hypothetical experiment. It's like a Brexit thing, right? There'd be all this sort of talk about, we're going to add two extra zeros.
Two extra zeros. Yeah.
But there's a thought experiment. I think you're right. There's a thought experiment. If they suddenly did it, boom. Suddenly all our civil servants got two extra zeros. And I think pretty much.
I mean, I don't know. Is that the
it has to, right?
Is that the final underlying?
It's just a gauge. It's a pure gauge in that case.
Yeah. Is that the final underlying determining? Like I mean, assuming every currency.
Yeah.
I don't know. Assuming every nation made, everything they're going to trade, they all had the same amount of, stuff in relative terms.
Yes.
Yeah, they were all going to trade.
Rowan Nora is onto this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Rowan Nora's point. Yeah, we're abstracting away all of the real production and war and famine and all that, which can erode your currency as well. It goes sort of 1-to-1 with your production. Okay. So we abstract that away, and then our story.
Okay. We're going to abstract that away, and we're going to say that country one manufactures pencils and country two manufactures pens, right? And everyone in country one wants a pen, but they only have pencils, and everyone in country two wants a pencil, but they only have pens. But they're all able to meet the demand of their writing utensil, right? And create a surplus enough to export perfectly the demand of the other country, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So we have a pencil and a pen that have the exact same value because there's the exact same demand for each of these, both domestically and from the foreign side. So if that's the case, and there's 100 currency units in each nation, and then it finally settles that because of this we have a 1-to-1 ratio between the currencies, and then country two decides we're going to go to 10,000 units. Would it change to 100-to-1? And if that's, I guess what I'm going to try to get at here, the point I'm trying to get at here is if that's the
abstract,
if that's the case, then what the foreign exchange markets are attempting to do is come up with a answer to what is the proper exchange given the real rates, given the real exchange terms in real terms,
right?
As those get not extrapolated, but as those get viewed through the lens of the actual price that we then set on each individual currency, right? And so what I'm getting at is are we getting a comparative advantage lesson with just two products? Yeah. That's. I guess that's what I'm trying to do, Ty.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at then is that one of the things that I've noticed is that when you get a massive expansion of credit, the dollar pushes lower, right? When you get a contraction of credit, private debt, the dollar pushes higher, right? There's a strong correlation there, right? Yeah. And so it seems to me, all things being equal, assuming no productivity gains or anything like that were gained from the credit expansion, right? Then the dollar should just follow perfectly the flows of the currency relative to any offsetting flows from the rest of the foreign sector.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer.
Well, thanks for letting me.
I also think that the credit crunch or loosening was also related to the interest rate parity principle, right? And that's what Keynes and that's what a lot of people have said is the much stronger factor, is interest rate parity, rather than purchasing power parity, which is more of a sort of a base level for the exchange rates. Yeah, man, and yeah, I think I agree with Nora. At least the rhetorical question there. The MMT shouldn't really much care because it's about your domestic pile of stuff, and your real terms of trade.
Yeah, and I mean that's
you shouldn't care about your exchange rate. What the hell?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
It's all predatory financial sector.
I absolutely agree. Ghost in the half shell. I'll answer your question in just a second. But I agree. I said this in the Sitch and Adam interview. Every government's main goal should be full employment first and foremost. No matter what.
Yeah. That was one of the highlights, man.
Yeah. No matter what, if you're doing everything you can to be at full employment to increase production.
Ghost's question, and then I got something that I want to give you a chance to respond to.
Ghost on the half shell. Yeah. When the credit shrinks, that would be depressionary, which is why the dollar always pushes up, heading into recessionary environments. Yeah.
Make money hard to get. Price goes up.
What does this all mean? What should I be buying now? Okay. Here's the thing. Actually, I always use the dollar as a leading indicator. Right. I tried to get into foreign exchange, but what I ultimately figured out is I think the dollar index just tells me about the market. I think it's a good leading indicator because I actually think the market is efficiently at this, and I don't think this is going to sound so stupid, but I don't think anyone's figured out what I've figured out.
You can have that.
Yeah, Derek. Don't trade FX markets. It's one of the things. Yes. Yeah, one of the things you'll realize. Let me see. Give me a second. We're getting there.
Yep.
Wow, I must have posted this a long time ago. Where the hell did I post this at? There we go. One second, guys. 1 second. All right, it's getting late. I'm getting tired. Okay, I posted this a while back on Twitter, and it just shows that every time we have this big dive in the dollar, that runs in conjunction with a strong move in markets, and kind of leads a strong move in markets, and vice versa. When you start to get a big run up in the dollar, that's usually an indication. It doesn't have to be. I mean, again, there's so many dynamics that are taking place. That I don't want to say it's some sort of one-to-one correlation, but when you do start to see that big ramp up in the dollar, I mean, a really good example of this was the ramp up heading into 2022, heading into
Where's that on the chart? Can we see that?
Right here, off to the right side.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, another good example was heading into 2015, 2016. At the end of 2016, we had, a pretty severe sell-off in markets and kind of close to a recession. So I think there's this dynamic that's playing out. So I use the dollar as a bit of a leading indicator, and especially if the dollar's trending lower or trending sideways, I'm not terribly concerned that we're going to have a major credit crunch. Now the fiscal side can still give way. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
You like those arrows? Thanks, man. I hand drew those.
I kind of buy that.
I hand drew those myself, TR. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Causal arrows here. The only place you'll find this.
Yeah. Causal arrows. I like it. All right. What was the question?
What did you think about one of the critics? Okay, I didn't scroll through all of the comments. Couldn't stomach it, man. I don't know.
I did.
I was trying to find one that was actually intelligent, but I thought I'd give you a chance on this to respond. The dude says, I cringed so hard when I heard him describe the price points for his advice. And just to be clear, not because you can't have those price points, but because usually you have credentials. A public record. Or a huge following. Yes, you gotta have the huge following or you're just not credible, right? Proxy one of those. He seems to have none of those.
None of those.
Yikes! So I'm very skeptical of the value. I'm a finance guy, by the way.
Yeah, good. I'm glad he let me know that he's a finance guy. I do have a public record, though. I mean,
seriously, I didn't have the stomach to look for a really intelligent criticism. Yeah, but I was also glad that on Adam and such that quite a few people in their live stream chat were quite sympathetic, seemed to be keen to learn, didn't maybe understand a lot of MMT, and I think you put them right on quite a few points. It's good.
Yeah, man, that comment.
I must have the huge following.
It's like when my wife tells me, "No, he doesn't." Women don't really like him that big. Just. Oh my god! Anyway, I'm gonna lose some followers for that. No, to respond, I do in fact. I'm glad I'm getting a few ha-has. Yeah, good. I do make public. Any big moves, I'm very clear on Twitter that I think a trend is changing and I've gone that way, and I've been public about that. Scroll back up to the comment. So I don't get what he's saying. I mean I actually messaged back. I'm like you can go check out I do pin I do pin everything as well. So on Twitter. The next thing too, actually the people with the biggest following, they're successful. They're successful because of their following, not because they're right. Like, like our buddy, what's his?
Yeah, it's called grifting. You can be a successful grifter for sure.
Yeah, like our buddy Colin, all the downside with none of the upside of stocks, Roche, right?
Roche.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great example of that, right?
Yeah, with enough of a following, you can move.
I was going to pull up the chart, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. So anyway, that's my response. I mean, I don't. Yeah. And so, I mean, what if I had a big following? Would all of a sudden that mean that I'm right?
To be more right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that is. I think enough people. I mean, those who have gray matter between their ears judge me by the evidence I presented and the rhetoric and arguments that I made, not by the. And you know what, my following is starting to grow, baby. We're growing, and we're making some moves to grow even bigger. I'll tell you what, if you're not subscribed, get subscribed, hit the like button, turn the notification bell on, because we are we're working with those applied MMT guys. We're coming up with some ideas. We're going to be having a lot of fun in the not too distant. Yeah, that's a good point, Josh. That's a good point, Josh. And I got Warren Mosler And I got Warren Mosler to say I'm the next Warren Mosler. So
Yeah. And of course, a lot of these commenters and posters, they'll point out that Warren Mosler is, is a fraud or a crank or whatever. I mean, so you got to take these hits because we're totally counter paradigm, like I keep saying, and it's very natural to just get these kind of reactions where we're saying one thing that can be often very counter narrative or counter the mainstream paradigm, and so it's just totally natural that we're not going to have a big following initially because we are the new paradigm, and B, even if we're right, we're not going to be credited for being right for a long time.
Oh yeah. It's they knew it. They knew it all along, right? They knew it all along, right? Yeah. Oh, I don't. It doesn't bother me one bit that. By the way, it doesn't really bother me that guy said it. Yeah.
Fair enough, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that's up 60% this year in returns, or 50% this year. I mean, we're doing just fine where it matters. So
that's it. Well, I just wanted to give you the chance
as it turns out, my wife actually is quite satisfied with my returns this year.
Who, by the way, is an important part of your household. That's where all the spending goes. So you're helping the real economy.
Oh my God! Yeah. Speaking about doing all the spending, I haven't been in a grocery store. I finally had to do our grocery shopping for the first time. We usually do the pickup thing. So she does this. I had to go do this and spend my own money finally. I don't like grocery stores. That's what I found out.
They're mean and nasty places. Forcing you to have to hand over your hard-earned tokens for some actual food. Terrible thing. Decommodify groceries.
Yes, to have my tax dollar pay for fudge rounds. Is that what he called them in the song? That was a good debate. The tax dollars for fudge rounds in the Richmond from Richmond song. This is going over Bijou's head. Yeah.
Not sure what he's talking about.
Okay. All right, what else you got, Bijou? It's the third hour, so we're allowed to go off the rails.
Now you put me on the spot. I don't know. Maybe something positive. I quite like this Majority Report episode. They did an interview with a guy called John Shelton. So I just want to plug that. I think. I don't know what people will think about it, or anyone in the chat cares about education. My daughter is starting off as a new school teacher, and it's like I got to be very careful, dude. I have to be, and I'm kind of interested in your homeschool take on this too. But I have to be careful about what advice I give to my daughter, because there's so much I can give. It can get overwhelming, right? But this I thought was really interesting. I'll say, if you're interested in education and pedagogy and all that, I think Alfie Cohen, Alfie, is
that's
really
me
good.
That's me in the grocery store right there, by the way, Ty. There we go. Yeah. Go ahead. Back at it. Keep going.
Excellent. Yeah. This talk on the education myth was really interesting. It talks about how the founding fathers of the United States of America really not all that fussed about education for jobs training and things like that. And you know what I'm thinking immediately when I'm hearing this dude talk? I'm thinking, oh, that's such an MMT position. Because, unemployment is an unspent income story. It's not about productivity. It's not about having people who are really skilled. Upskilling your workforce is something you want to do because it increases your productivity, but it had nothing to do with unemployment. And I think this guy was, although he's more on the educational side, I think he could be really susceptible to listening to some MMTers on the unemployment question. So the idea, and even up to Harry Truman, who I've always been a bit suspicious about as a great president, I'm not sure. The dude, turns out Harry Truman wasn't all that bad. He had some sort of good ideas and things, and wasn't all that a bad guy. and he understood this too. That I think Truman would have been really in for a job guarantee. And that the purpose of education, according to your founding fathers, was to have a well-informed citizenry.
Okay.
A well-informed public. And, that's so MMT, right? The one of the reasons why Warren is so sort of out there with some of the things he says is because he just wants the people to understand the way that the system works.
Yeah.
And he's not going to give you any myths or lies or fairy stories or, quasi pseudo false religious type attitudes towards money. Because everyone's scared that the government, if they understood MMT, would just go out on a spending spree. No, I just want people to understand the reality. If governments then use that to go out on a spending spree, well, so be it. But he's not going to tell a lie. To get some sort of economic outcome that he, for some whatever reason, thinks should be the case, right? So this was very much in line with your founding fathers. Apparently, so I didn't read the whole book.
Do you think then you should tell your kids that Santa Claus is real?
Man.
Do you want a well-informed children?
My brain stopped working there for a bit when you mentioned Santa Claus. I don't do Santa Claus, by the way. It's the other side of the family. No,
okay.
If he was real, I would want them to know.
Okay.
Good stuff. And anyway.
I'm in the tell it like it is camp.
Tell it like it is. And what about your okay, here's a
Josh. Bijou's just finding out for the first time. It's all hit him. What? If I could have captured Bijou's face, the shocked expression, I would use that. I'd use that in a thumbnail. Market's crashing. What? Santa's not real. Oh my god. Yeah. It's a great thumbnail.
No, it's just not the sort of question that would come up. That's it.
Got a couple people in chat that I've never seen jump in before. Jason, welcome, man, and also we got Eric in the chat as well. Thanks for saying hi, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So related to that, and here you can come back with a serious question, not a freaking Santa Claus question, which is going to stun me.
Wait a second, it was a very serious question.
So with your homeschooling, so what Alfie Cohen says, and I just really love reading his stuff, right? I could just read it all day almost. Okay, so he's the guy who wrote Punished by Rewards and the problem with gold star rewards. On his website you can get a lot of his materials free. You don't have to buy the book. And this is so good. It really speaks to my soul, man. You want kids to not be studying and learning or doing any activities because you want them to, and you don't want to be handing them out rewards in order to, he just regards rewards or incentives or praise as bribery. And the way to go, the best teaching, and he's a researcher on this, so he knows his stuff as well. The best way to do education is to have something intrinsically interesting, intrinsically motivating. The kids want to do this stuff because it's just so damn interesting. So you've got this guy, this little kid in my daughter's class who's watching some Olympics, or maybe it was the recent international athletics meeting, and he sees these advertisement for this drink called Prime.
Ooh,
and it just flips on a switch in his mind, in his brain, and now he can't think about anything but Prime. This drink, when is this coming to New Zealand? He's talking to my daughter Kezia, Kezia, when is this coming? I don't know why. Don't ask me why they don't call her Miss Smith. They have first name terms with their primary school teachers these days. But anyway, it's like
back when I was a kid.
When's it coming to New Zealand? And it's like in every single lesson of the day, he was like prime, and so what my daughter did, and I wasn't telling her to do this, right? She's coming home after school and giving me all these stories, and I'm kind of just laughing and smiling, and so she used the prime. I was like, prime is a prime number, you know. She loves doing mathematics and that.
Yeah.
She just weaves this guy's interests into the lessons, and encourages feeds it, whereas most teachers would try to sort of quell that stuff, right? And so this is what I'm on about. This is what I try to if I can, without overwhelming her, try to get it to read. I want to get it to read this guy Alfie Cohen, because he's just so damn good. It's like, don't use extrinsic rewards unless as a nuclear option, right? If for some reason, you got these state imposed requirements of sitting exams and that sort of stuff, for some reason you just have to get your kids in class to do things, otherwise you'll lose your job, you'll get fired, then sometimes you just have to use extrinsic rewards just to get the kids to do it, but it erodes the quality of the task, and it's just a terribly destructive thing to give extrinsic rewards.
Well, damn, that's how we run our whole ship here, man. Yeah.
You gotta rethink about this.
I pay them to learn, and I beat them to when they fail. Yeah, it's pure free market. Yeah. I'll
give you free time outside. Yep.
It's quite funny because we had a lot of reasons why I ultimately homeschooled. And I think I don't know. I don't know if we did it all over again, what we would do. But I'll tell you one of the reasons that just really I just wanted my kids to be able to learn in a way that they just wanted to learn. I would sit in school, I remember learning what was it? Was it COBOL? I remember learning COBOL, and then having BASIC as well, learning a little BASIC really early on. I mean, obviously I was far from a programmer, right? But I just remember sitting in class thinking, God, I'd like to be learning how to program some video games and stuff like that, right? And my son, he's how old's my son? 12, right? Dude, I think he'll spend 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. The scripting language that he knows is called Lua, and it's the underlying language in this game called Roblox. I'm sure if any of you guys have kids, you know what Roblox is. And I mean, he spends weeks at a time just focused on this, right? And I'm so happy that he does it, right? If he's got to put aside other assignment work, right? Because he's having to figure out so much. He doesn't even know it. He doesn't even realize that he has to learn algebra, right? You know what I'm saying? It's great. He's got some Derek. He's got some games that have gotten tens of thousands of plays on Roblox, and but it's it's exactly what I wanted, right? So he's learning what he needs to learn, and I understand at one point we have to put a little bit more structure around it, but that was always
structure is good. Yeah.
There was always because assuming he doesn't take off and is isn't just running his own business by the time he's 18 and he has to become employed, he's got to speak the language of the business world or whatever, right? He's got to learn how to do this. But he's
also remind them that don't get them anxious about that. I mean, as I think a lot of job training is on the jobs anyway. Right? Yeah, especially at younger ages. Yeah, especially as you're coming out of college or whatever. Yeah. I was always so freaking anxious. Anytime I started off on a new postdoc or something, it was like, oh hell, I know nothing about physics. Everything was new, and I changed projects. Well, it seemed new. Everything seemed new. So you don't have to give them anxiety about that whole sort of job skills thing. It's just all
No.
a lot of,
That's
a lot of
no.
bullshit.
That's me knowing. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
We
Cool,
focus
man.
them.
Well,
I want them to have as much fun as they can
your kids are lucky then.
in learning
Yeah.
and yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of my own personal school experience getting in the way of the opportunity.
It's unnecessary, right?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have some like terrible experience, right? I mean, it wasn't bad, but
No,
I mean, looking back
that's
at
the
it,
thing.
yeah,
The
looking
normal experience is terrible compared to what it could be.
what it could have been, and I always, yeah, I mean, there were just so many things that, yeah, there's just so many things that it just seemed like a waste of time. My wife, on the other hand, I don't know, yeah, homeschooling has been
some kids like structure and like having teacher hold their hand.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of the teacher understanding the difference between kids and all that.
Yeah.
Also, Josh has a good point. It's like, yeah, it can sometimes be like seen as a bit harsh that you're not praising your kids. It's not that though. It's not a tough love approach or anything like that. It's actually very, very warm and very nurturing and caring approach to education. And I'm not giving Alfie Cohen justice here, but it is just pretty cool the way he triggers normal sort of education policymakers when he talks about the problems with gold stars and rewards and that. But when you dig into his writing, it's actually a wonderful, loving approach to education and training, and it's a very nurturing approach. And it doesn't mean it's all feminine or anything like that. No, you can have a school of hard knocks as well, but it's like you're working with the children. You're learning in a sense with them as well. You're not speaking at them. You're not like doing the lecturing sort of approach, and the payoff and the dividends and the out. That's like again, it's another freaking MMT moment. It's like why don't people understand this? What's taking so long for schools and for public schooling to sort of cotton onto this?
It's
a lot of people do understand it, and it's just they're frustrated. They have to work within this public education system that they've inherited.
There's the best part about homeschooling for me personally, one is seeing my kids thrive in the things that, and I think in a public school or a private school situation, they just never would have had the opportunity to do, right? I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, I was diagnosed at a young age with ADD and dyslexic and the whole, had those kind of learning disabilities very early on. So I mean, it was tough for me to go through school anyway, right? From an academic side, right? I mean, it's just, and then the other thing too, having the ADD and even into adulthood, and I mean, Bijou, I think you've witnessed this as well. Just watching how I work, right? I mean, I'll hyperfixate on things, right?
Right.
And
It's a healthy thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way. I mean, it's just the way that I work, and then I think of my middle son who just mimics a lot of the ways I work too. Public schools just make that impossible to do, right? Because in that situation, it is a factory, and then like those teachers have to run the same class 8 times a day, and you just got to pump the kids out, and that is just not conducive. And when I'm able to do my 2-3 weeks of hyperfixating, right? I mean, you can get that thing anyway. I'll digress on my own personal journey,
cool,
but. And those are part of the reasons why we went down the path of homeschooling, and it's had its pros and its cons. But that's the best part about homeschooling really is like when the kids ask you a question, and how does gravity really work or whatever, you can pull out the blanket and show them, space time and the fabric of space time, and the
thing is, I've done all that in schools. You can do it, right? You have to be prepared to be a bit of a weirdo, that you don't care about what other teachers think about you. Always keep your students and kids in mind, because after all, it's like you say, in a sense, in a public school, you're kind of like being their parents for part of the day. And although a lot of woke people will sort of maybe jump on me for saying that, I'm not going to back down on that. It's like you're their guardian for a time. They're under your care and responsibility. And if you're just one of those sort of more radical teachers who just loves people, loves kids, loves to see like the joy on their faces when they get to ask those questions, or when an aha moment comes up, that's what really drives the better teachers. And man, we've got a long way before we can get public schools where that's the kind of predominant mode in thinking. A lot of it's getting rid of exams and stuff like that, and using tests and exams as a test of the teachers rather than as a test of the students. And even then, it's like maybe even the teachers shouldn't be put under that anxiety. You know what I mean? Because it's a community thing. Teaching and learning is such a community thing that the more we can de-emphasize rewards and grades and tests and exams, and make it so that it's very easy. It was very easy for me to get kids to do their own exams. You just give them something to do. And it's like doing the task is its own exam. Like, it's clear if you're trying to, fix something on an engine or a line of code in some software or whatever, if it doesn't work, that's the exam. It's like, oh, I failed the exam. Oh, come back tomorrow and try again.
Yeah.
My attitude was I never have any kids fail exams. They just don't succeed at the exam today, and tomorrow they'll come back and maybe do it better. Or they'll just, I don't. Oh, actually, Mr. Smith, I realize you don't really want to learn this. So, okay, let's just move on to something else.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that is. So in like the homeschooling world, they call that unschooling. This is like we call this like
I've heard of that.
An unschooling approach. Yeah, where you kind of just let the kids kind of lead the way.
I'm very sympathetic.
Yeah,
and it could be done in public schools as well.
What sucks? Okay, so here's what really sucks, right? Is it's like so let's just say like in my situation, my kids are able to, if they end up just needing a day job, right? When it's all said and done, the best way to get a high paying day job is to show that you've made it through college and you get the degree, right? And then you get a good, paying day job and you'll have a wife and kids and that sort of thing, right?
Right.
And so that's always the risk from the way that we're doing it is, right.
Yep.
They've really got to kind of make it on their, not make it on their own, but it's going to be a definitely a more difficult path for them to just go get the degree to get the desk job and that sort of thing. But
I'd have some faith and trust in your kids in that respect, and also maybe just point out the goal in life is just not to
exactly
do those kind of bullshit jobs. You might find that the more credentials you have, the more of a bullshit job you've got
exactly. And that's, more importantly too, it's really what we want. What we want for our kids more than anything else is to ultimately be able to find joy, meaning, and purpose out of whatever it is that they decide to do, and not have it rest on purely material material stuff. And if they can nail it, and be good to your neighbor, love your neighbor, all that sort of stuff, and if they can focus on that, then no matter what, no matter how the material side plays out, it'll shake out where they can just live their best life experience. So
it's life, and have a community of support there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. That's wonderful stuff. Is that a good place to finish?
I think we can wrap it up here. It's been another good chat, another good stream. I don't even know what is I've got. Okay. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up.
Is there any other questions?
If there were, I think we've moved on.
It's been funny. Is he pushing Newton's constant out of school here?
Well, he wanted me to write it down to share with my kids. Yeah. My son actually was yelling it out as we were talking. He was watching the stream, and he's like, I
got it.
All right, Bijou, why don't you send us off, man?
It's a vitally important thing. work out the Planck units for all those measurement.
Well, that's exactly what. Yeah, that's what my 6-year-old daughter was saying. Is really the.
I don't know what the Planck units are for monetary,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I'm sure I'll be able to figure it out someday. Yeah. Nice. I love the chat. I love all of you in the chat, and another great show.
Do you have an outro? Do you have an outro?
I'm gonna have to talk about the Hanatiri liquid. Can't help it, man. Because I tell you, there's been an overshadowing question passing over the MMT Honeyland. Will the MMT macro trader be able to forget enough economic to make an excellent trade? You know what I'm talking about. I've forgotten more economics than you'll ever know. Will MMT macro trader be able to forget enough economic to make an excellent trade? Or will the MMT macro trader accidentally remember too much economics and cause a liquidity meltdown of precious mead out of his honeypot piggy bank? And will this trigger a rash of beehive colony Hanatiri collapse disorders at the fiat pollen, as the fiat pollen is revealed to be nothing but a lousy IOU of the New York Fed chair apiarist Jerome the Stinger beekeeper, the Honeyland central cranker? And with all these storm clouds of forgetfulness of economics brewing, has there been a stealth stimulus offsetting the phantom liquidity drain? It's the age-old Batmobile problem of whether one gets wetter from the raindrop impact angle running through the stealth stimulus rain cloud than when walking. Think about it. To find out, tune in next week to find out how much economics a trader can forget and that deep MMT can recover for us to then forget all over again. Same MMT time next week, same MMT channel.
That was awesome. We'll find out if the hidden stealth liquidity drain exists or not. I don't know. I've already forgotten. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in.